No doubt.
It didn't work out, you know, I mean, over the years, but we had 3 children together, 3 daughters together, and so we stuck it out for about 15 years, and then, you know, realized that neither one of us were happy, and so, you know, it went by the wayside.
It happens.
Yeah.
Well, look, let's zoom forward a little bit to
Okay.
the Lansing area, and you settled in here, and one day you wandered into my old bookstore, which I'm going to cover in the introduction a little bit.
Okay.
But prior to that time I met you downtown, you had been with many bands. I think several.
Yeah. The '80s, we formed a band with a really talented harmonica player, and started out with just the 2 of us, kind of doing guitar, harmonica, blues stuff. We developed it into a band. We wrote, you know, well, I wrote a bunch of music for it, and then that last, well, we worked at that for several years. We finally, it dissolved. He and I ran into some disagreements, so that were not resolvable. So
divorce.
Divorce. Yeah. And then I worked with a bass player who no longer lives in the Lansing area, and we did a duo thing for a while. Then I went kind of on hiatus. I had to get a job. I finally graduated from college, so I had to get a job. I substitute taught for about a year, and then I started working for Citizens Group, the Michigan Citizens Lobby.
Oh, I remember you telling me about that.
And I did that. I was a door-to-door canvasser, and then field manager, and then eventually a canvas director, and so on. And did that for, you know, a long time. Kind of burned out on it. So I wasn't. It was one of those jobs where it's your life, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 366 days a year. So, you know, I played a lot of music because we would have staff nights and stuff like that, but I wasn't doing anything as far as performing publicly or anything. I actually played a lot of music because I was always hiring musicians. They're always out of work. They always need a job, and canvassing is a good job for somebody who has a good public persona.
Yeah.
So it tended to attract musicians and kind of people with unusual characteristics, like, you know, hardware hanging off their body and different colored hair and stuff. So
it's the rainbow.
Yeah, exactly. I drove a truck for a while. That's when I joined the last hippie band in the mid-'90s.
We're back with the fortunately authorized biography of Michael Medicine Girl Hyatt, and Mike was going to give us some insight into his time that he spent with the last hippie band, which I knew of and was probably in the same area as I think it was a Plain Brown Rapper, something like in that era.
Yeah, probably. The hippie band started. Tom Burke started the last hippie band in 1979, and they did cover music, psychedelic music, you know. A lot of weird stuff, you know. But I'm trying to. They did some King Crimson. They did. Oh, geez. Now I'm drawing a blank on some of the stuff, because when I came with the band, the repertoire changed quite a bit, because I came and they didn't do any Grateful Dead covers. I'm going, how can you call yourselves the last hippie band if you don't play any Grateful Dead? But there's a joke there that people who know me will get. So we used to get asked that at gigs. How can you call yourselves the last hippie band if you don't play any Zeppelin? You know, and that's like, well,
did you guys go on
Leonard Skinner, you know?
Did you guys go on the road a lot then?
In Michigan, regionally, we spent most of our weekends away from the Lansing area unless we had a gig here. I joined the last hippie band. They had just broken up. A bunch of guys playing in the band quit, and they had a standing gig at Max in South Washington, which I don't think is even next anymore.
I think it is.
Okay, maybe it is. If it is, that's great. But they were the house band there for several years, and they got stale and tired. And Tom kept pushing people to learn new material, and he wanted to do original material. And the rest of the guys weren't that interested. They just wanted to play the gig and draw their money and go home and drink or whatever. So mid-90s, Tom reformed the band, basically. And I was one of his first recruits, and then we put together a band. And Tom and I were the constant for probably 5 or 6 years. Tom Burke and I were the constant members, and then we sort of rotated in bass players and keyboard players and drummers and so on. That's when I started developing my long list of drummer jokes and so on. I don't know that we would take interview time telling drummer jokes, but I started playing original stuff with the Last Hippie Band. My original songs were the only original songs the Last Hippie Band ever performed, because Tom was very, very, very much a perfectionist, and the stuff that we worked on that was his stuff, he was never satisfied with it, so we never performed it, we never recorded it. He had done some recording of it back in the 80s, and later on in his life he released those recordings as the Last Hippie Band, but they were all just Tom playing all the parts, which is not unusual, in the digital age. It's really easy to do that. So my original music was the only original, and it wasn't a lot. It was like 2 or 3 songs of mine that we played that became kind of standard songs.
So you guys kind of bit the dust.
Well, yeah, I just kind of faded out. Over the course of the time, my current wife, my current and last wife, we adopted my grandson. And it just became, when I started with the band, we would, she and I would pack up, we'd take off, spend the weekend, playing music and having a good time. Sometimes in the summertime we'd camp, and it was a good time. We had, we had fun with it. And once Austin came on the scene, we couldn't do that. And I found myself being away from home every weekend. I didn't like it too much. So I started begging off and telling them they needed to fill my spot, and I think the last time I performed with them was in I think the summer or spring of 2000, maybe 2001. I don't remember exactly.
You kind of went off on your own after that?
Yeah, well, I started. Yeah, in 2001, I started. That's when I came up with the stage name of Medicine Crow. I was intending to form a band that would be called Medicine Crow. And
well, you're a one-man band.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes I play with a band. But
well, I met you in 2002, so your name was a year old.
Yeah, I'd been using it. My wife and I participated in the Rainbow family events. So I was using it as a rainbow moniker. People you have your rainbow name and then your Babylon name. Yeah. So I was using that for, people were calling me Medicine Crow for a while. Yeah. And I just decided to use it as a stage name.
Well, it's admirable. It's a good name. Plus you have Native American background.
Yeah, it's real sketchy. It's nothing. It's my great grandfather. I suspect had.
But you're not hiding out from the cavalry or anything.
No, I'm not. Okay. I'm not running from the line or the res or anything like that.
So you went out on your own, and that's when I met you.
Right.
Actually, you played in front of my store for a long time, at least once a week for a while. Often.
It's actually a couple of times a week. Yeah, and for the summer of 2003, I did that.
By my standards, as a failing businessman, you made great money in front of my store. You made more than I did.
I had some days where I actually raked in a fair amount of money.
Yeah, that was a good